Yep.
Yeah,
Neutral
perfect.
spine is where from your hip, the greater trochanter, to the top of your iliac crest, to the back of your shoulder
Mm-hmm.
is straight. And a hip hinge is where you can bend over
Right.
and keep your torso straight. So your glute cannot work as soon as you are not in a neutral spine position. So it pulls down and air gets sucked in your air hole. There's also a really positive side effect of that is when you have that weight on your hands, you also have more weight on your front tire and your front wheel.
Okay, today's topic is form and technique in cycling. I've learned that on my very first bike fit with Peter Spencer in Australia. And today we're covering a little bit of that. Pete, what is posture, proper posture in cycling? What's the benefits? That's today's topic on our bike fitting episode. Thank you once again.
Thanks for having me. I probably spend more energy than most bike fitters in trying to teach people that posture when they sit is one of the most important things to a bike fit. And sometimes it's the case that I barely even change anything to do with their bikes, but in coaching them on how to sit and how to hold their body and how to actually engage with the equipment that they have, I can take most of their problems away. On the other side of that, I get athletes coming in that have a gym background or have a strong background in other sports where form and technique has been drilled into them. They come in with significantly less problems, even though their bike fit is absolutely horrid from a seat height, a setback perspective, all the rest of it, because they have the physicality to hold neutral spine well and not cause themselves any issues. Every sport I've ever done starts with the basic fundamentals of form and technique. But cycling, for some reason, it's here's a bike, here's where the bunch meets, off you go, and figure out the rest as you go. And I suppose in the first few rides, the very first thing that people are trying to teach you is how to point out, potholes and indicate and things like that so that the group as a collective are safe. But nobody's ever actually teaching you anything to keep your person, your body safe and structurally sound. And then once you've embedded these shitty posture habits and nobody's ever told you any different, it's really hard to unlearn what you think you learned in the first place, but really you just never had any instruction on.
Okay. Road cycling and triathlon positions aren't like easy, on the first tries.
No,
Yeah.
it's for starters, let's probably describe what neutral spine actually even means.
Yeah.
Neutral spine, I'll try and get this in shot. Yeah, I probably have to try and tilt the camera down without losing my screen.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Neutral
Perfect.
spine is where from your hip, the greater trochanter, to the top of your iliac crest, to the back of your shoulder
Mm-hmm.
is straight. Now,
Okay.
most cyclists ride like that.
Yep.
And that puts a big curve in their lower back. And now their hip and their greater trochanter are facing the sky. Now, that and that are completely different things.
So it's not like, hopping on a bike, pushing pedals, hit, grabbing hoods and everything else. It is, form and technique. We need to, let's say, as you've just did, teach people how to do. Correct?
So when I'm trying to teach people how to do this, all right, and I'll roll back and I'll try and do an example.
Yep.
Okay. Generally, they're looking like this. All right.
Yep.
And their primary complaint is the back of their neck hurts and their lower back hurts and their saddle hurts and they think it's all shit. ask them to stand up, stick their ass out, and then come back down again.
Yep. So, in like adults, we do have office jobs. Most of we do have office jobs. You know, we just sit like that for ages, let's say, and at some point we choose road cycling and again triathlon. It's not only visualizing what else people could do to improve and form and posture and learn the proper technique.
Um, Mobility is one of
Mm,
those words that'll get thrown around here. I get a little bit frustrated with this idea that you need to go and do so much extra work and my core's not strong enough or yada, yada, yada.
mhm.
Um, I disagree with that entirely. And you use the example of office posture. Does it take you more strength for you to sit properly in your office chair, or does it take just a little bit of diligence and habit? And I
Yeah.
would say it is mostly diligence and habit.
Mhm.
There are some positional things that will stop you from being able to hold a really good neutral spine position. Like if your cranks are too long, it'll push your hips backwards in a posterior rotation.
Mhm.
If your seat height is too high, the same thing will happen. There are some positional defects that will make it more difficult, but it is not that you can't hold a good posture with good form because you don't have enough core strength. Um, it gets a little bit frustrating hearing people trying to use that as an excuse, because when you go into neutral spine, you
Mhm.
are not flexing your stomach. You're not flexing your core. You're actually doing the exact opposite to
Yep.
bring it all into tension. And I describe it to all of my clients that you want your belly button and your
Mhm.
ribs to be as far apart as possible.
Yep.
And once it is that you do that, it actually pulls all of those muscles into tension that then helps not only pull your pelvis in the right direction, but gives you a whole lot more stability in the pelvis because all of those muscles are kind of stretching. So that's not a strength related thing. You're not holding
Mhm.
really anything. You're just bringing your chest forwards by
Yep.
stretching your belly button and your rib cage apart.
So it's not only the case of getting a higher stand pointing up, hoods backwards, something like that. It's not like an easy fix.
But some of those things might be true. But if you sit like a fat chick on the couch who's eating Tim Tams, nothing can save you. No stem up, stem down, stem out, stem backwards. None of that is going to change how you feel compared to actually resetting your pelvis and
Mhm.
creating that neutral spine from the first place. And the second thing that happens when you stretch all of that out is that you stop using your pecs to hold yourself up on the bike, which is also usually part of why you're pushing yourself back into a curve. All right.
Yep.
Once it is that you become tall, it's your lats that start holding the weight, not your pecs and your biceps and your lower back that's trying to lift your head like a crane.
So from the get-go, like early morning, what people should check, you know, when they first start pedaling, um, you know, like to correct themselves daily.
Well, I suppose they need to understand, what it is to do a hip hinge. Okay. And a
Mhm.
hip hinge is where you can bend over and
Right.
keep your torso straight
Yep.
like that.
Okay.
Most people, when you ask them to bend over, bend through their lower back. So learning how to hip hinge is a really, really valuable skill. One of the ways that we teach this, and I'm sad that I don't have a broomstick here,
Yeah.
is that you get them to hold the broomstick up their back, right,
Hmm.
and bend over without a broomstick leaving either of those two contact points.
On a regular, week or month, how often do you do that? Like on your feeding sessions, probably every fit. Is it a case of
95,
yeah?
95% of fits.
Mm.
And like I said, people who come in who already have sort of a gym or a strength background of some description, they know exactly what neutral spine means. They know exactly what a hip hinge is, because that is the pivotal thing when you learn how to start doing things at a competitive level. That they generally won't let you lift a bar
Hmm.
unless it is that you can show them that you can lift a piece of conduit that weighs
Yeah.
500 grams with reasonable technique. Because if you got to lift something heavy and you don't have that posture down pat, you're going to get very, very, very injured.
Mm. Everyone wants to ride, further, longer, and faster. You've mentioned without having a neutral position, it probably does something to your lower back, mid back, and behind the neck. It has something also, bad in relate to applying power or,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So your glute cannot work as soon as you are not in a neutral spine position.
yeah,
Okay. There's a few different things to the mechanic of exactly what makes a glute work best. And then we're talking bike fitting principles of exactly where you are relative to pushing down on the crank and all the rest of it. But as a statement of fact, if you have your pelvis in an upright position and have bent over, you cannot recruit your glute anywhere near its capacity, and your quads have to do all of the work. And as cool as that is, and it makes your quads look great in a pair of short shorts, um, they're just not nearly as strong or functional or capable as driving power with your glute. And if you wanted to just prove this right or wrong, some people might know what a goblet squat is, where you hold a
hmm
weight and you try and keep your body kind of upright and come up and down. Do
hmm
one of those and then compare it to how much weight you can do if you have neutral spine, bend over and sort of lift weight up off the ground. It's not
yeah,
exactly an identical exercise. It's not a perfect example, but relying entirely on your quads compared to a quad and glute combo, you know, a blind man can see that you want to be
yeah.
involving your glute as much as possible. And I'm yet to hear a story of anybody who can lactate their glute, like that burning fire sensation that you
Yeah.
can feel in your quads. I've never heard anybody in any sport say that they can lactate their glute. And that's because the blood supply to your glute is just so good, that the clearance rate is so good
hmm
that that fire sensation doesn't happen.
Yeah. Um, Correcting these isn't an overnight process. It takes, time. Uh, does saddle shape help?
Yes, is the simple answer. And this comes back to wearing your clothing properly, having an
Hmm.
appropriate saddle choice. And it's normally really easy to convince people that the saddle they have is not appropriate,
Yeah.
because you get them to sit well and they immediately feel their back relax and all of their key issues that they're complaining about um, you know, disappear immediately. But they're like, well,
hmm
I can't sit like this on this saddle. Well, that's because your saddle's shit. Usually it's the saddle that came on a bike.
Yeah.
And we need to discuss options that allow and encourage you to sit with that same posture.
Right. Do you follow the flat shape, curved shape for this kind of posture, this kind of back, or it is very individual? How do you do that?
Um, the When you hold neutral spine, okay,
Okay.
we've already assessed what level of appropriate sort of drop. So how your back angle, how low or high is going to be acceptable for that particular athlete. And there are different saddles that work with different, call it exit angles from the saddle. Some saddles are better because you're going to be on a little bit of a wider bone point the higher you sit, and you're going to be on a narrower point the flatter you get with your back. And it's a negotiation of what your back angle is and your pelvic exit angle is versus what saddle is actually going to be mostly appropriate for you. And this is where those saddle arse width measuring machines are just complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Because depending on, and I'll just pull up my little pelvis here, my mate, I call him Skelly, okay? If you are sitting here on the widest part of your ischial tuberosities, you are doing it wrong, okay? Please just take that. So when you sit on the arse printometer and sit here, what the fuck are you measuring? You're not measuring where you're meant to sit. So when we sit with neutral spine, our pelvis is much more like this, okay? And we're trying to sit here on this part. There's a big flat section here underneath, okay? Don't know if we can see that as well as what I wish we could. So it's somewhere here, okay? Which means we're sitting somewhere here.
Yep. So
Okay.
for those that can't see us, they're just listening. What is the main difference? If you're sitting on the back part, it means you're probably on 90 degrees. Sitting
Exactly.
upright.
Your pelvis is upright pointing at the sky, and you're using your lower back to just bend forwards in the opposite direction to all of those vertebrae in your spine are actually designed to be it. And for people who haven't looked at a model of a spine recently, your lower back actually dips from where your tailbone is. It comes forwards towards your belly button and then curves backwards sort of halfway up your back to be in the opposite curve. You know, your
Like an
spine
S
isn't
shape.
just, a vertical stack. It goes in a squiggle, and that's its natural bend. It's supposed to be like that. And when you sit really poorly on a bike, you're actually taking that innie curve and you're turning it into an outie curve. And there is no part of your musculature or any of that bony structure that wants that to be the case.
Okay. Not sitting on a neutral spine, does that affect breathing as well? Lungs?
Of course, of course. So your diaphragm, all right, is the bottom of your ribs, okay? And that muscle there works basically as a vacuum to suck air in your air hole. So it pulls down and air gets sucked in your air hole, okay? As soon as your ribs have come down into that space, your capacity to recruit all of that extra volume from your diaphragm pulling down is just not possible. And you can do that experiment yourself sitting in a chair. Crunch your ribs back and try and take a big breath in compared to sitting as high up with your belly button as far apart as possible. Tell me which breath is even bigger than the other. And I mean, I call it Wout gut, in respect to Wout van Aert. You see him climbing or whenever he's going really, really hard, and he looks like he's got this belly that he obviously doesn't have. The guy's ripped, but that's his diaphragm in full effect. You could call it belly breathing, depending on, there's all different words for it. But here he is basically extending that whole cavity to be able to take in as much air as possible, because the lungs just can expand further into that space and you can just take more air on per breath.
Okay. Another benefit from neutral spine is the right length, reaching, the hoods, the drops, and everything else. Is because let's say it starts from all the way back and moves, people's hands on the way it should be. Could you just explain this a little bit for those that are not very familiar with the neutral spine, but thanks to you and this whole education series you're doing, they will be.
I hope at least prompts some thought, because a lot of these ideas are really challenging to the old school guys that got taught how to ride, you know, in the 90s.
Hmm.
But when you look at a hood, a road hood or whatever, um, the knob end on it, the high bit at the
Yep.
end, all right, it has an angle like this. And
Yep.
your hand is meant to go exactly in that point there, all right? And you're meant to lean on it, okay? The old school guys, they keep propagating this shit that was so poorly taught that you're meant to have, light feeling on your hands
Yeah.
and and a soft bend in your elbow. And that's great if you want all of the weight of your head and your upper body to be getting lifted up by your lower back. Now, I don't think that's a very good idea. I think that's frankly fucking ridiculous. Um,
Mm-hmm.
where I teach people the idea that, we all know how to sort of rest on our knees and just
Mm-hmm.
relax our entire torso. And that's the feeling that we're actually going for. Now, my arms are not straight and strict, and I haven't like straightened them out as hard as possible because that's really silly. Um, but all of that softness actually happens in the back of your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
not your arms. Because if
Yep.
you're trying to have a bend in your arm, you're flexing your pec and your biceps, and invariably you're going to try and lift all of that weight back up off your biceps and your pecs because they just can't do it very well. Compared to the idea of unloading that weight on the hoods like they're designed, your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders then get pushed backwards, which then helps with our neutral spine. Right, our diaphragm then is released in its entirety. Our hip comes forwards and relaxes, and your lats bear that weight sort of behind your shoulders as your shoulder blades pin backwards till they end up
Mm-hmm.
on like folded back to your rib cage, and you've created a mechanical bridge that's just ass, hands, and leaning on the back of your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to hold your weight up anymore. There's no muscles involved really in that. So it's less effort, and it feels awkward to go, why am I doing so much less
Yeah.
work? And most of the time people go, oh shit, I can feel a lot of weight on my hands. Fucking good. Because every bit of weight that's on your hands is no longer at your lower back. That thing that
Yeah.
you
You
came in
should.
here with a complaint for.
Yep.
Um, and gee, I can breathe better and my ass doesn't hurt as much and all of these positive side effects. And they usually bring up again, but I've got a lot of weight on my hands. Yes, you do. That's the point. Thank you very much for noticing. There's also a really positive side effect of that is when you have that weight on your hands, you also have more weight on your front tire and your front wheel.
Yeah.
And by sort of bearing your weight in this particular way, generally I'll get a message like a week or two later going, all of a sudden I can descend heaps better.
Yep. Feels
Yes,
much safer.
safer. And when they learn how to sort of steer through the back of their shoulders, more
Mm-hmm.
so than trying to drive it like a car, um, all of a sudden, all of their cornering and all of their handling gets so much more secure because they don't have all of their weight getting pushed backwards on the back wheel.
Okay. I imagine by now people are getting a better idea um, of what they should check in their, you know, their backs is fine before trying to get another part, because people go straight for the easy fix, which is probably, oh, I need a saddle, I need a higher
Yeah.
stem. What would you tell people, back home, how and what they should, check for?
Well, they need to get a really basic understand of what a hip hinge is. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they have money to burn, which is great, go and get an exercise physiologist or a really qualified personal trainer. Go to a weightlifting gym instead of a commercial gym
Hmm.
and find somebody who understands form.
Okay.
Okay. I know cyclists are allergic to gyms, but I hope that changes in the near future. Um,
Yeah.
and go through the basics of understanding how to bend over and how to use their glute. Um, an example, again, this is meant to be a little bit funny, but it is one of the ways that it was explained to me in the gym the first time.
Hmm.
If I jammed a torch up your ass, you need to be pointing that torch not at the ground, but rather at the wall behind you.
Hmm.
All right.
Makes sense.
That exactly. Most people can imagine that going, oh, okay. Oh, I've got to bend that far over. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. And, you know, getting a broomstick and making it touch the back of your neck and your tailbone at the same time and learning how to bend over without breaking contact between those two things.
Okay.
Um, it's called a hip hinge, and if anybody wants to jump on YouTube or Google, you will find hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of what a hip hinge looks like. And that is the basic premise of holding neutral spine and making back pain go away.
Great. On your practice, how long do you reckon it takes for someone, improvement show up? Like a few weeks, a few months, if they do, accordingly.
Well, it depends on how diligent people are in sort of understanding what they're trying to do. For some people, pain is a huge motivator. If somebody's
Right.
had a sore back every ride for the last 12 months, for starters, I haven't immediately cured that back pain. There's going to be a level of trauma there,
Hmm.
like a residual pain there. But if they ride for the first half an hour and they have zero back pain, and then they forget and get a bit lazy, and they start to get those pain signals coming back, an intelligent person goes, "Oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'll reset," and then their back relaxes and go, "That's better." Um, and it's a case of it depends how motivated they are, and for a lot of people who are generally sort of pain free or only a little bit of an ache that they're very used to putting up with, they're less motivated to get this right.
Okay.
And usually I can spot those people who aren't really that invested in getting it right. And then I sort of position them accordingly in a way that sort of still lets them ride with poor form and sort of the least amount of pain possible at the same time. But there are other people where as soon as you explain it to them and the penny drops, they're like, well, of course, this is exactly how, no, it's exactly how I would do my other sports and everything else I've always done. So, of course, that makes perfect sense. Nobody just explained it to me in a cycling perspective.
Right. Probably the last one of today's episode. When you teach people neutral spine, they're probably moving the pelvis forward. Do they straight away complain, oh, my lower parts are getting smashed? Is that the case?
Unless it is
And
that they've
why is
come in
that?
with a good saddle. But a lot of those times, one of their complaints is that their saddle, feels really uncomfortable. And then once they reestablish how to sit on the saddle that they have, they go, hey, this saddle's not so bad after all. Well, when you're using a product in the way that it's intended to, be used, it's
Yeah.
going to be a whole lot better no matter what. It's kind of like if you're, driving a Tesla on the sand. Well, that's not really how it's meant to be used, of course. Right thing for the right place. You need to engage with a saddle in the same way as the saddle was designed to be used.
Great. So it's not overnight fix. It's a combination of the proper technique, proper equipment, and correct information.
Yes, and you need to start with just the basic information first, and it is a holistic approach that you need to add, you know, some good advice from the first place, and then finesse all of those little bits and pieces along the way to try and have a good result. Where good is usually plenty satisfactory for most people. You don't need to get all the way to absolutely perfect all at once.
Yeah, it's a process. Pete, I think we covered probably not everything, but the basics of um, proper form, neutral spine today. Is there anything else you want to add? Because I'll ask people, viewers and listeners, to send questions once again. Just feel free. Yeah.
I'll add just one more thing here. When it comes to cycling, we're obviously trying to generate the most amount of force we can on the pedals with the least amount of effort. Most of our research articles, most of our research in general on exercise science comes from a gym atmosphere of how to generate the most amount of force and all the rest of it, because it's a controlled circumstance. When it comes to cycling, we really want to be replicating exercises that weightlifters use. I know that seems like a little bit of a far cry, but here we have people whose entire sport revolve around straightening your legs with the most amount of force as possible. And there are a lot of exact symbiotic exercises that we should be doing in the gym as cyclists. And as cyclists, we need to be cycling as if we're lifting weights in the gym to try and make that the most powerful pedal stroke we possibly can.
Okay, deadlift.
Exactly. Well, yes, like a deadlift, like a squat. It's a bit of a combination of all of those things. But my point is, if weightlifters are lifting with neutral spine to be able to lift the most amount of weight as possible, we should also be looking at all of those things that those guys do to generate the most amount of force as possible to try and cross over that perfection onto the bike.
Fantastic. Mate, thanks. That was great once again. Can't wait for the next session next week. Leave your comments down below. Shoot an email for Peter Spencer. I'll leave his email in the comments. Thanks a lot, Pete. Thank you.
If anyone has any ideas on something they specifically want to investigate and discuss in detail, we're always open. Please drop us a line. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.